Do you know, once you really start paying attention, you really do start noticing the signs everywhere that inform you, that tell you what state our society is in, what our society is, what are the main concerns of our society, and who we really are and who we've become. And one of the most interesting ways that I've found that gives you a really good insight is to listen to radio adverts. Now, before I start on today's topic, if you do like my content, please do subscribe and leave a comment and let me know what you think about these observations that I'm going to talk about. So every now and again, I'll go on YouTube and I'll watch some adverts from back in the day, from when I was a kid, to see which ones I can remember. It's quite interesting, really, to see what those adverts said about the time, and just from the point of view of a visit down memory lane, really, and a bit of nostalgia. So for me, that was the late 80s and early 90s, and certainly the 80s, as you're probably aware, was a decade that was characterised by image, things like image and success. And when you watch the adverts from back then, the TV adverts that is, you see that the companies that are advertising, they're cultivating their products and their services and the way they're showcasing them around those concepts such as success and image. And it's really interesting because they were the traits that define the 80s. And as you're probably aware, I don't watch TV now, so I don't really know what TV adverts are out there, although I'm guessing it will be similar themes to and similar companies to the ones that I'm going to talk about that I hear on the radio, albeit with the added compulsory virtue signalling and wokeism as well that is so prevalent these days. So radio adverts, I do listen to the radio. I listen to various radio stations. I'll listen to greatest hits to hear some decent music from the 70s, 80s and 90s. I'll sometimes listen to talk radio to get a bit of a balance to the mainstream media. Talk radio is pretty good for that. I'll listen sometimes to Classic FM. But of course, the drawback to listening to radio is you have to put up with the godforsaken adverts every 20 minutes or so. So this is where it gets interesting. And this is where I have really noticed in the last year. I've listened, don't get me wrong, they piss me off, these adverts, but I listen carefully to the words and to what they're actually saying, who they're targeting and what they're selling. And it's fascinating. So in between the regular bouts of aggressive government propaganda, the adverts that the government puts out on the radio, you know, the ones, you're all murdering bastards, and if you step outside your house, you're going to kill a few 90-year-old grannies, you know, that kind of thing that is omnipresent everywhere. So in between the government propaganda, there's more propaganda, just a different type of propaganda. And it's from companies that are either trying to make you skint or trying to make you unhealthy, whilst at the same time pretending that they're looking out for your well-being and keeping you safe. And the companies that I hear and the businesses that I hear advertising on the radio at the moment, at a time, let's not forget, when many people are struggling for finances, struggling with their mental health, aren't supposed to be going out of their houses, aren't supposed to be going out into the fresh air. Just keep that in mind, you know, i.e. lockdown. The adverts, 90% of them are for either companies that are trying to sell you the latest mod con, such as phones or cars, actually. So the latest model of a car or an Apple product or an iPhone or a smartphone, that type of thing that costs hundreds or thousands, or in the case of a car, tens of thousands of pounds, pandering to our materialistic needs. So they're either those types of companies, or, and this is the really interesting thing, McDonald's and KFC, those two in particular, multi-billion pound companies that exist to make their profits by selling masses of people junk food, food that is incredibly bad for their health. Now, don't get me wrong, I love a McDonald's and I love a KFC. And every time I go into a McDonald's or a KFC, I'm aware that on many levels I'm being a hypocrite because I don't like what they stand for. But they have a product that's addictive, and I do like a McDonald's and a KFC. But that's not my point. The interesting thing is, okay, so at a time when we're living in this health tyranny, when our freedoms are being tied to the fortunes of the NHS, which is bizarre, and our future freedoms are going to be they're going to be measured against whether we've had, and already are, a negative test for COVID, and then whether we've had a vaccine. So while we're living in this health tyranny where people have been convinced in their millions that you're healthy if you've had a negative test and you've had a vaccine, we're being sold these things that are bad for us. Bad for our health, bad for our mental health, bad for our physical health. And that's the way that people are being conditioned now. You're healthy. Not if you exercise, if you have a healthy immune system, if you go out and want to have some fresh air, if you want to interact with nature. But no, you can have your McDonald's, you can have your KFC, it doesn't matter. And we're going to sell you. We're going to sell you all that, and we're going to push our products onto you. As long as you have the test and as long as you have the vaccine. Another type of company that advertises very heavily on the radio at the moment, and I know for a fact on the TV as well, are gambling companies. William Hill, Sky Bet, Ladbrokes, all the rest of them, and the thousands of parasitic gambling companies that are out there. Now, of course, what would you expect to happen at a time when people are losing their jobs, that they're getting desperate, that they're unhappy, that they're suffering mental health issues? You would expect that a lot of them will turn to gambling, which of course has happened. So what do the gambling companies do? They push their products even more onto those vulnerable people. And I will say, I don't really like the use of the word vulnerable, but somebody with an addiction is vulnerable to the product that they are addicted to. Therefore, they are at the whim of the advertiser, in this case, the gambling companies. So junk food, gambling, and things like phones and cars. And also missold investments. I hear this a lot, missold stocks and shares, ISAs and this kind of thing. We can get you your money back. And again, I think that represents the culture that we have now, where we don't really need to take responsibility for our own decisions anymore. And there's always somebody else to blame in our world now. Responsibility, what is that? That's a very intriguing concept, responsibility. And I will do a video all around what is responsibility and go deep into it. But, you know, the culture of litigation that has seeped in from, I think from America, that is now firmly entrenched in the UK as well, whereby if you make a mistake or, okay, someone has taken advantage of you, maybe, someone's got to pay. You don't need to worry yourself. Someone's going to pay for this. And that's the culture. So missold investments, KFC, McDonald's, William Hill, Sky Bet. You can see where I'm going. And the last type of company, type of business that is advertising at the moment, the supermarkets, in particular, Tesco. And I find this really distasteful as well, because at a time when the free market economy as we know it in the UK, and if you think of one country in the world that has invented the free market economy, it's the UK. And the free market economy, in contrast to what those on the left would say, works for those who have a sense of aspiration, who are willing to work hard, who are willing to take a risk. The free market economy has enabled people to build their own businesses. And as Napoleon said, Britain is a nation of shopkeepers. Britain is a nation built on the back of small business, independent, local business, which, as we know, is in the process of being decimated. I.e., the free market economy, as we know it, has morphed into one where the only businesses that can survive and thrive are the ones such as the Amazons, such as the McDonald's and the KFCs, just like I referred to before, the ones who are increasingly able to get a monopoly, or something, not a monopoly, something close to a monopoly though, to a disproportionate and unhealthy market share of their particular sector. And that includes supermarkets, who at the expense of the small businesses who are not allowed to open because of government policy. Okay, so it's so unfair. And what are the supermarkets who are making tens of billions of pounds profit now, as people of course turn to the supermarkets more to do their shopping because there's less competition, and the fact that obviously they have very good logistics as well and can deliver at a day's notice, then their profits are increasing. So what are the supermarkets doing? Okay, they're cashing in. They're cashing in while they can. Let's kick these smaller competitors while they're down, eliminate the competition completely, and further monopolise our market share, which I find pretty repugnant. And I use the word repugnant. I think our society is repugnant in so many different ways, as you're probably aware. And until the point where I see that more people are going to take a stand on an individual basis, that's at the point I'll start being a bit more positive and a lot more positive and optimistic with my messaging. But just one of my videos, just one of the strands that are once you start unraveling what our society is, and one of those strands is advertisers with the clout to be able to further lead to a deterioration in our society by preying on people, by plying them with things that they don't need, and by tapping into their psychology to make them buy the services and products which are unhealthy and aren't going to help them, but which we all lap up. So I think it's really, really interesting, the types of products and services that people are buying at the moment, what it says about us as a society, where we are, where we've come from, who we are, and what we stand for. I find it really, really interesting. So let me know what you think about that. If you have any comments, let me know, and I'll speak to you soon. Okay, bye-bye.